So the Flash is now the world's fastest mosquito. Season 2, Episode 4, Let's Talk. Hey, what's good, comic fans? This is Campfire Comics, and we're here to talk about The Flash, Season 2, Episode 4. I'm Campfire Rich.
And I'm Campfire Nate, and this episode is actually called Firestorm number 1, just in case you were wondering, because that's what it should have been called. Richie, what did you think?
I thought this was like a perfect episode. I thought it was a great balance between all the different stories that they kind of were going on. You had tidbits of Dr. Wells and the little love interest between Barry and Patty. Obviously, Firestorm, I was really intrigued about that and who they was going to get for Firestorm and how that was going to go down, because he is one of my favorite characters they got in this whole little world right now. And then the deal with Iris's mom, which I thought was shoehorned in before, they managed to fit it in nicely. You know, they kept it separate from everything else. Like, you didn't have Iris running and crying to Barry throughout the whole episode. It didn't bleed through everything. It was just its own little segment. They handled it. It was pretty natural in there, and I thought it was great. I mean, just back and forth through these different storylines. I actually really enjoyed this episode a lot, even though a lot didn't happen as far as the Flash is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally cool when they have an episode that focuses on, especially on a character like Firestorm. Again, I've liked Firestorm from the comics and stuff. He's one of those kind of like B, C class superheroes that I actually enjoy. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of like him. I thought that, again, this episode was very similar to, I think, last week's Arrow, where it felt like they were getting things ready for DC Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay.
You know that Firestorm is going to be in DC Legends of Tomorrow, so they needed to give him kind of like his, like a sort of an origin. Not that we already have it. We needed a renew origin, get him working again, and then move him out. And that's basically what they did.
Yeah.
They hooked him up with a new person. It's not the character that they got to use that is now mixing with Dr. Stein. I don't remember him from the comics. I don't, when in the comics it was always either Jason or Ronnie. Okay. He's not either one of those guys. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they took little liberties with that. But that's fine. I mean, it's Firestorm. I like Firestorm.
Right.
I mean, in the comics, it's Ronnie and Dr. Stein, and then it's just Ronnie for a while, and then it's Ronnie and Jason. So, how they decided to do this with Stein and someone else, I mean, eventually that might lead on. There might be something else that happens in DC Legends tomorrow, because right now, it feels like they completed the Firestorm story on the Flash, and they moved on from that, which is good. We're looking forward to seeing him more in the new show. But I enjoyed it. I liked how they wrapped it up.
I think that's good that with that and the Arrow and how they're setting these characters up in their own right. Like, you have an episode, you kind of talk about Firestorm, you kind of, that character grows on you. You understand, and again, it happens in a nice, natural progression. That way, when we get the new show, you're already invested. Like, you're already into these characters. You know how they start.
Yeah.
And it's cool. They don't have to. They can hit the ground running. In other words, and so I like how they're doing that. Everything seems natural, and that's important to me. And storytelling, to allow me to get involved.
It saves them that when DC Legends comes out, it saves them from having to spend an episode for each character explaining who they are and where they came from. We already know, what I'm saying? Like, most of these characters are already going to know.
Yeah,
and that makes it easy. It just, like you said, you can hit the ground running right off the beginning with the show. You already like these characters. You already know a little bit about them. And it's actually good because in a television series, you're always going to have these episodes that are kind of down episodes that don't have a lot to do with the main plot. Mm-hmm. And what they've managed to do is take something that has to do with a different story and use that as their down episode, even though it's not technically a down episode, because but it really doesn't have nothing to do at that moment with the Flash, and then sprinkle in a little bit of things that happen to the Flash throughout. And it's great. I loved it. I loved it a
Yeah,
lot.
it was really good. Let me ask you this, man. I want to make a note that it might go unappreciated or unnoticed, but I think Cisco is perfect for this show. I mean, his comic relief, like he's like the perfect comic relief for whatever reason. Almost at least once in an episode. He doesn't talk a whole lot. I mean, he doesn't have like, huge presence at all times. But when he pops up on screen, man, he really pops. There was that scene in there when he was talking about who would turn down the ability to be a superhero. And he kind of made this face like, huh, yeah, sign me right up. And like, I was cracking up. I thought that was perfect. They didn't hit any more on it. Other than that, he had that one line. It was funny. Same way when
Yeah, no, I mean,
Jay, the other Flash pops in and he was like, this place is secured. And then all of a sudden he just says, really? Like, those little lines, I think, might go unappreciated or unnoticed, but I think they're great for this episode. I just wanted to bring that out.
yeah, it's hard to put. I mean, you got to have a perfect balance of comic relief in like an action show,
Right.
So if you do it over the top, it becomes silly. If so I think they do a good job with it for sure. It's definitely he definitely isn't annoying so much as I've seen other comic relief characters be.
Yeah, no, he's not annoying at all. He fits in there just right. There was one thing I was disappointed. There's actually two, but the one thing I was disappointed in was Hewitt. That was the other guy that they was at first trying to turn into Firestorm, right? The other scientist guy.
Yeah.
I thought it was neat how they brought him in, how they kind of charged his body up, and they gave him these little powers. I felt like they wasted him, and he might come back later, but he turns into a bad guy, somebody they got to stop. He's got a hot head, he's got a temper. I was kind of hoping there for a second that because he was a scientist and he was smart and he was kind of egotistical or whatever, that he would turn into a mini supervillain. That he wouldn't be just the one throwaway villain that they would dispatch of in one episode, but one that they could carry out through several episodes because
Right.
he'd have been smart. Like he could have been a step ahead of them, or he could have figured some stuff out, or he's been to their lab. And, to me, the villains that, have a high level of critical thinking ends up being the best ones. And I felt like they wasted them. They just kind of turned him into a hothead, just throwing his blast out everywhere and then whatever. But again, you mentioned it. This was more about Firestorm than setting up a new villain. But
I mean, they could have. I mean, I'm trying to go back and think in my head if there was ever, Firestorm has a few of his own villains, but I can't remember if he falls in that category at all.
okay, was he a name?
So I don't know.
They didn't give him a name. They just kept calling him Hewitt.
No,
They didn't give him a
don't
super
think
name.
so. I don't think he is. So, but
Okay.
I mean that would be something that I could probably do some research for. But Firestorm, it's just he's one of those characters. He's had a few moments. He had his own run for a while, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't read them all.
All right. I wasn't sure.
Some things.
I feel like they would have given him like a supervillain name if he would have been, something to pop back up. But that was just my thought. I thought he could have been something more than what he was, but it didn't really take away from the episode. It was just something I kind of wanted. The other thing that disappointed me is I mentioned how natural the progression was with Iris's mom, and they talked about I have a brother. Like I could have, the way that was handled, I didn't like. I thought that was kind of forced in. If it was something that's relevant to the story later on, which it has to be for him to throw it in like that, I wish it would have handled. Because I don't know, man. She was accusing her mom of lying. You lied to me. I'm like, you haven't seen her in 20 years. You didn't give her a chance to talk when you did meet her. You completely shut her down and then dipped. So at what point was she supposed to say, I've missed you, I've been gone for 20 years, by the way, you have a brother? Like, come on, man. You don't open up like that. So I thought it was unfair that Iris snapped off like that just so they could throw in her son.
I do think they're eventually trying to set something up for the introduction of Wally West, who is the cousin or the nephew of Iris, who will eventually become a Flash. Okay? In the comics,
all right.
There's been Jay Garrick. He was the first Flash. And then there was Barry Allen. And then Barry Allen was killed. And Wally West became the new Flash.
So in the comics, Wally West is Iris's cousin.
Is his cousin.
Okay. But in this
So
one,
how this will play, or actually, it's her nephew.
Her
It's
nephew.
I'm sorry.
okay.
So how this will play out, I don't know. If she does have a brother, they could be introducing the brother so that you could introduce his son, which will be Wally, or they might take liberties and the brother is Wally. I don't know what they're gonna do with that. I feel like that's the only reason why they set this up. Although I know I've read that they've talked about bringing in Wally, but I didn't feel like that was something we were going to see this season. So maybe this is just sprinkled in, but we'll get little bits and pieces of this throughout the year.
If he turns out to be Wally West and somebody that's a major character who ends up being the Flash or something like that, I don't know how they would get rid of a Barry Allen in a show this big, and because it's not a comic book. But at any rate, I understand now why they had to bring it out if that's the case. So I mean, it makes it acceptable. Now, this whole episode was pretty good. I liked it. It was nothing crazy over the top. I just enjoyed the storytelling of it. And then, bam, SharkMan. I don't know what his name is, but SharkMan was awesome. Like, it actually freaked me out. Like, we think the episode's about to end. Barry's sitting there looking at his girl, Patty, looking all cute. And then this hand comes out, and like, it kind of freaked me out. Like, I was like, whoa, what is that? And then, boom, jerked up. And how awesome did he look? I mean, for a TV show,
SharkMan was pretty crazy looking. I mean, as silly as a man shark is gonna look
or sound,
this looked kind of, and yeah, this one actually it looked kind of bad.
No, he
what I'm
looked
saying?
awesome.
Like he looked bad looking, like he was gonna tear somebody up.
Yeah.
Like all those muscles and teeth and everything. As silly as the idea of that would be, they did it. It didn't look as silly as you would think it should look.
No,
Based
it
on
didn't
comics.
look silly at all, man. It didn't look
because when
goofy.
you read a
It
comic
looked
and you
bad.
see a SharkMan and you're like, how in the world are we going to translate that into a television series? They did it. It looked good. And then out of nowhere, the hooded gunman comes out and just blows him away.
Yeah.
And I mean, and like immediately I'm like, who is this guy? And then it clicked in my head. It's gotta be Wells. He went and stole some stuff that we didn't mention that. He broke in somewhere. Patty and Joe know about this. They're not going to tell Barry because they don't want Barry to flip out. And then the dude reveals himself that it's Harrison Wells. So this is Harrison Wells from Earth 2.
Yep.
Here's the question. Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy?
I think he's going to be a good guy. When at first we wasn't sure, and this is the way this character is. Like, he really could flip-flop, or he could be both. I mean, as bad as he was in the first season, he really wasn't bad. He was kind of good at the same time, right? So it could be something similar.
I mean, yeah, he
to
was
that.
like, he was good at moments, but then he was bad at moments.
Like,
So,
generally
yeah.
good and then bad. He had alternative motives, but at the end of it, it made sense why he went to those extremes. But and when he first showed him in this, I was like, oh, so Wells is going to be bad again. He's doing shady stuff. He's breaking in. He's stealing equipment. And then when he saves him, it's like, hey, I'm from Earth 2. Basically, I come at Zoom. If you saw the preview for the next one, Zoom has terrorized his world, and he's coming to stop him. So he's figured all this out. He studies metahumans. He come over. He knew the SharkMan had come over. Obviously, he had studied or dealt with him before, that he knew that shotgun would stop him, right? So to me, it was like he come over here. He's tracking down the shark. He's trying to find leads to get to Zoom, and he's like, I need to get this gun. Let me go jack it in. I don't know, man. I thought it was great. The episode ended perfect.
That's I mean, with even like I said, like I saw the preview too, and they said that. But here's the thought though: is he? I mean, can you trust him? Obviously,
Barry's not going to trust him. Barry's not going to trust him. He's not going to
none of
believe
them are going to
anything.
trust him. None of them are going to trust him. So
Yeah.
so is it going to be they should trust him, or should it be that their intentions, their feeling of trust that they shouldn't have because of what he was in their world is legit or not? That's the question right there.
He didn't even
Harrison Wells,
trust other
good
Flash.
or bad?
He didn't even trust the other Flash. Kept that fool locked up, and they did all kinds of research on him, and he was the other Flash. So what do you think he gonna do to the other dude who was a bad guy in his world, man? He ain't gonna trust him at all, unless Jay comes back and says, yo, he's a good dude. We've worked together before. Like, I don't know if they're going to bring him back or how they're going to play that, but it's very interesting. This episode was perfect. It went from a very good storytelling episode to like, bam, there's SharkMan, there's Wells, and they bringing it out. Great episode. We liked it. If y'all like this video, that's all that we're gonna wrap up with this video or whatever. Yo, like, comment, subscribe, get in the conversation. You can follow us at Twitter at ComfireRich. You can follow Nate at ComfireNate. Let us know what you think. Is Wally West being introduced, and is it Iris's brother and not nephew in this? Dr. Wells, good or bad? What are your thoughts? Let us know. Until next time, we are out.
See ya.